Morning, everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I'm going to go ahead and unmute everyone. This is an interactive conversation. If you want to be muted, please do mute yourself. Don't feel like you have to talk, but this is not a one-way street today.
Okay.
And I am going to go ahead. It's 11:02, and we've got a nice handful of folks on the call. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and we'll do some quick introductions and get started with our conversation. So let me go ahead, share.
I have anything to write with, honey? Something like new. Let me take notes. There you go.
Hello?
Hi, so we're so excited to have everyone here today for our nonprofit Lunch and Learn. I'm really thrilled to have Beverly here joining us. And one of the wonderful things about everyone moving to these remote conversations is just the absolute wealth of fantastic webinars. But I was hearing really loud and clear from people, we just want to talk. We just want to talk to each other, to other nonprofit professionals, and pick each other's brains. So that's what inspired Lunch and Learns. My name is Catherine, and I run Giant Squid Group. We're a small consulting firm that helps to build the capacity of small and startup nonprofits through coaching, grant writing, strategic planning, fundraising planning, and a whole lot more. And I'm joined by the fantastic Beverly Hamilton, who I will ask to introduce herself in a second. So I would love for us all to go around and share, starting with Beverly, your name, your organization, where you're located, and then a recent win, something that's going well, that you've experienced, whether it's a great meal you made or a professional win, and then anything that is on your mind that you want to share today, either get my input, Beverly's input, or just to chat with the group. So Beverly, if you can get us started, that would be fantastic.
Yeah, happy to be here. My name is Dr. Beverly Hamilton. I am currently the interim CEO for 3 Day Startup. It is an entrepreneurial education experiential learning program with a global network. I am also a consultant, so I hold a number of other little roles, but in the last several years, I find myself in a lot of interim leadership opportunities, which is great. I think probably most people know me as the founder and former executive director of the Austin Diaper Bank.
Wonderful.
Okay.
And Beverly, what's a win you've experienced lately?
Well, I have actually really enjoyed this pivot because the organization that I'm with, 3 Day Startup, has a natural alignment and was already moving in that area to be more of a virtual offering. And so I feel really lucky to be able to work with a really smart team who's making a huge turn more quickly than they thought, but also there's some COVID opportunities for us that we're working on to actually use our program to do an innovation design sprint across the UT campus for COVID related solutions. So that's in the works right now. So that's something I wouldn't otherwise have been able to work on without all of these circumstances.
That's great. Okay, who's next?
I'll go.
Well,
Steph, go ahead.
Okay. Hi, you guys. I have my video turned off because I'm in the midst of an allergy attack, and I might be muting myself at times because I have a 21-month-old, and when we're all home together. So
yes, I have an 8-year-old who might bust in as well. So
okay, cool. Good. So I am a consultant with Giant Squid Group for the last year. I run a theater company in Austin. A win would be we have a garden now, and that's pretty awesome. We're one of the families that started a victory garden, and I tell you what, it's really great for mental health. We've been loving it, and my 21-month-old now, she loves to help. She calls them the babies. She loves to help the babies grow. So that's pretty fantastic. What was there something else, Catherine?
Any specific challenges or topics that you want to share with the group today?
Huh. As an arts as an artistic director of a theater company, one of my challenges has always been, and I see this as very common with arts organizations, especially, setting goals, measurable goals. You know, specifically for funding requests and stuff, and I'm sure across the board that can be kind of challenging.
Yeah.
So, you know, that's something that's sort of a constant learning experience, a constant struggle for me.
Setting goals for sure. And I'm actually going to stop the screen share now that we know our questions so I can see everyone's beautiful faces. Fantastic. Anyone else want to chime in before I start calling out names?
Well, I haven't got my video on, but I'm Charles Roberts from Newport, Rhode Island. Hello, everybody.
Hi, we're so happy to have you, Charles.
Oh, good. Yeah, and my associate, Jana Sullivan, requested that I chime in, and I'm really glad to be a part of the group. I am the chairman of an organization called Rhode Island Slave History Medallions. And what we do is we place medallions with QR codes at locations that involve with slave-related history that developed the state of Rhode Island.
That is fascinating.
And when this virus came along, we had just put our first medallion at Patriots Park, which is the first battle of Rhode Island. In fact, the first battle of the Revolutionary War that was fought by African and African-American slaves and Indians, and then indentured white servants. And they all got together and fought the Hessians and stopped them at Patriots Park.
Wow.
I was very, very, Senator Cicilline came in and helped us do the ribbon cutting. And we had just a fabulous ceremony. And we just got off the ground. We've gotten grants, and then poof, here comes this virus, which for me, I refuse to allow it to stop me. I want to put up medallions in spite of the virus.
Yeah, well, that sounds like a huge win. I'm so happy to have you guys here on the call. Gianna, do you want to share any wins?
Sure. So I wanted to say that, so we'd like to make a shift to some video installations, and the Risham website already has some history there. And what we need is historic researchers and writers and a web design to further flesh out the website, and then to incorporate live video installations, might be with, say, Charles and one other person at that site, you know, at a museum or at a historic site where the installation's happening, and then just post that online so that our work can continue, you know, over this next year, because there's about 12 sites that we've begun the work of connecting and you know, getting to putting up the medallions. So we need to plot that out. And I wanted to add, so my field was arts management, arts development. Was and am a grant writer still as a consultant. And I wanted to pick up on what was it Beverly? Yes, Beverly said about I think or Steph was measurable goals and outcomes. You know, that piece is always so hard. You know, and I'm a senior, half semi-retired, and I came up in the 80s and 90s in the field, and back then little audience response cards were what you needed. You know, to collect 25 of those and pull a couple of quotes off of them, and that's your those are your measurable outcomes and responses. I think that needs to be updated, you know. So,
I love that. Yeah, thank you. That's a really critical conversation.
Yeah.
Who else would like to chime in and share some wins and some conversation topics before we turn it over to Beverly?
Hi.
This is Janet. Oh, go ahead.
Me, I'll go. I guess this is Janice Schwartz. I didn't put my video on because I went to sleep last night with my hair wet. And I am here because Catherine invited me from a Facebook post, which was very nice of you. I apparently missed a webinar that she did a few days earlier. So I just wanted to hop on. I am the executive director of a nonprofit for a rare disease. So we're a patient advocacy organization. We actually spend a lot of time with patients, doctors, scientists, and the fundraising part of our organization has kind of been missing in action. And we've been around for 15 years, so we've definitely had funding, but it comes through private individuals. But I think to be sustainable in the future, we want to look at some alternatives, some extra things. So I'm just here for my first time, seeing if I can glean a little bit of wisdom about anything. I'm an open book right this
Well,
minute.
we're so happy to
especially on
have you. That's
fundraising.
great. And what's been a recent win for you?
Well, the nice thing is we've seen a lot of people, especially in the nonprofit world, not do well just because of the ramifications of COVID-19. And I think a win for us is that we're still sustainable. We do most of our fundraising, even though I say we don't really do it, but we do a really big push at the end of each year, so we're okay. And we also had done a monthly donor campaign a year or two ago, and I think our win is that we're not just rolling in the money, but we definitely have some supporters that have kept us sustainable. So, as I look on some of these feeds and I go, oh, I just feel so bad. I feel really grateful for our own organization that I think that's a win that we're fine.
I'm so happy to hear that. That is a huge win. And Jamila, I believe you were going to chime in.
Yes, thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Jamila. I'm in Chicago. I work for the Chicago Foundation for Education, although I'm hoping to move and join everyone in Austin, Texas in a couple of years.
It's really great down here.
I am really new to development. So some wins that we've been having, I've been joining a lot of really interesting new leader cohorts, and that's been sharing a lot of great information and helping to build my confidence in this space. And then as an organization, we have started to really engage our teachers and our community a lot more. And that's been really fun because in development, I don't really work with the community. That's more the program side. So it's been nice to hear from a lot of different people. And then challenges for me, I'm just being so new in this space. I feel like I have so much information and it's really just time to put everything into practice and not having enough time with so many other demands. So I'm just learning how to really schedule my time better and put into practice everything that I learned from Kat's last webinar and to today.
Well, so happy to have you here. And I think, do we have one more person that wants to chime in before we get started with Beverly's notes? No. Awesome. Well, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen again. Beverly very kindly put together a few bullet points here. So I'm going to hand it over to her. And then once she's through these few discussion points, we'll just open it up and really have a Q&A. So I just chime in. You can chat questions if you'd like, if someone's really on a roll, but you can always just, chime in as well. So let me go ahead and share my screen again, which I lost how to do. Hold on. Share screen, screen one. We're all getting so proficient with technology. Can you all see this beautiful slide?
Yep.
Okay, Beverly, you're up.
All right, so there's just a little bit about me if you want to chat. I'm just at drbeverlyhamilton@gmail.com. I use that just because it follows me no matter what role I'm at, but I'm certainly available to talk if you need. I know Catherine is obviously a great resource. And for me, I think I might have mentioned I've done grant writing for larger nonprofits, million plus, depending on what you think is large budget or not. But I've also started a nonprofit with zero money and had to grow the entire grant and development pipeline. And I've helped organizations in between a variety of causes. So I'll try to speak to a number of different causes and what might be appropriate for orgs of different sizes. I know it's hard because we're all doing different things, and even though we're all nonprofits, you know, our contexts may be vastly different. So I'll try to speak to those differences as much as possible. But I just had, you know, 6 main bullet points to walk us through. I am the kind of person, I like to impose order wherever I can. That makes me feel good. And so that's what I'm going to try to do. I like to provide frameworks, bullet points, whatever. I think it's sort of the academic strategic planner in me to do so. And if grants aren't inherently your thing, thinking about you know, imposing order and providing a framework, you know, might help you get more in that grant headspace. So first of all, I think this is a great time to take a hot minute to just do kind of an assessment on a couple of different levels. And that's so I think people react quickly, right? When they really need to sort of, you know, see what's going on so that they then know how to proceed in the most effective way. So before you know, jump to action, here are some things you can do first. So one is just to really look at who you are as an organization. This is the same thing you would do if you're strategic planning or just putting a grants lens on this. And be sure that if you don't have a strong identity, that you get there. You hone in, you focus, and then be sure that's what you're communicating out to the community. If you are a Latina education organization that helps 6th through 12th graders, that's your jam, right? Not even Latina empowerment, right? Yes, Latina empowerment, but you really want to be able to have people know who you are and what you do. And that may be looking at things, these are often existential questions that you will talk about either at a board level, program level, you know, all across the organization, but it may be quality versus quantity. Would we rather help more people, or would we rather help fewer people in a deeper way? So like at the diaper bank, we have to have that conversation, right? How many diapers a month should we be giving people to help them? And is it we would rather help 1,000 people with some diapers, or would we rather help only 500, but really know that we are taking care of that need? So those sorts of questions, a lot of these are, what's your geographic region, etc. It can be if you're too well-rounded and you have too many offerings in your programming, it can actually hinder your effectiveness to demonstrate what you do. So I would really look at what's at your core. So 3-Day Startup, for example, I mentioned they do entrepreneurship education, primarily for the university market, secondarily for the high school market, and then they have a tiny executive market. Well, that tiny executive market, I don't want it to, you know, dilute my message that we are really focused on young leaders in our local community. So maybe I don't talk about that necessarily. So really figuring out who you are, what you do, and how you communicate it out, and getting that as focused as possible. If you don't, I'm amazed at a lot of founders especially want to talk to me about the diaper bank and how that happened. And I'll say, great, well, what is it that you do? And they can't tell me in 30 seconds effectively, right? So the same with grants. If you're talking to someone, you want to be able to give your elevator pitch right away. And maybe that ends up being, in terms of boilerplate, what you use for your organizational you know, profile paragraph, you know. So in terms of this is a great time to just take a minute with your leadership to decide who you really are. Now, the second piece to that may have to do with what's going on right now. So really taking stock about what you can do now. I think about it in phases, right? We can't all know what we're going to be doing in a year. It's too much. And it may, for you, even be, what are you doing now? What are you doing next week? I don't know. I feel really fortunate. My organization is fiscally sustainable. And while COVID is changing what we're doing, I don't think we're going to have to, scale back any activities. So we're sort of looking at it in a now, 3 months, end of year, but really then what does 2021 look like? And again, that is going to take some maybe hard self-assessment. I think a lot of people would love to just turn to diversifying super quickly their revenue streams, and whether that's going to apply for grants but the reality is you may not have that in your staff. You may have to contract out for an expert like Catherine. It may not be appropriate. I think everyone is a little scrambling right now. But if you can use sort of a self-assessment to look at your capabilities internally, your capacity internally, to see what can be still mission-driven, aligned with your mission, but yet maybe a little creative. Mm-hmm. I've been seeing some great examples in the education space where, they're making virtual happen. And then making sure that underserved kids have the technology they need. And, the buses are going out with the Wi-Fi on them to the neighborhoods that don't otherwise have that. There's all sorts of cool examples. But, it can be hard. One organization I work with does skin cancer prevention. Woo, it's a tough one. I mean, these are some tough conversations about, does anyone even care right now about skin cancer prevention? And so I'll talk I'll revisit that. What happens if you're just caught out of this COVID business and you don't see that you have a natural ask or a natural place? But I'll get there on the next slide. So we're gonna put a pin in that. To the point that people were saying about measurable goals. Yay, yes. So I'm an evaluation person, and I know because I've been formally trained as such, that I'm sort of, not rare, but most people haven't had formal assessment training in a graduate school. But what I love about evaluation assessment and working with nonprofits over the years in that is that it sounds so right. Evaluation assessment. It sounds scary, but really are we doing what we say we do? If someone walked in the room and wanted to say, hey, why does your, how do you know that your program does improve the lives of Latinas or, that are in 6th through 12th grade? So it's really just, why are you the best at what you do? Because we know there's lots of competitors, right? Other people in the space, but most people aren't doing it quite in the same way. And maybe they are, but maybe you've been around longer. Maybe you have better staff. Maybe, who knows what the differentiating factors are. But there's ways in that evaluation assessment space that you can really use. It could be something as easy as we were saying, like those, cards, or you can, people kind of jump in, well, we need to do a survey. We need to do these things. Yeah, I think whatever you say you're going to do, then you need to do. If you're going to say every year we're going to survey 100 folks, fine. If we're going to go out and we're going to hold 2 focus groups where we bring in program people or whatever and ask them, fine. But I don't think you have to make it overly complicated. So you can use what you're already doing as ways to collect data. because then, you know, these funders will expect you to report on it. So whatever you say you're going to do, be sure to do. And then really the whole idea of grantors asking this is that you're using whatever data you collect in whatever form to improve your program, right? So it should be a loop where it's feeding back in. But really the net of it for this conversation is you want to show why you're the best at what you do and be able to prove it. I personally love having a strong evaluation program in place because I don't want anyone questioning me. Again, imposing control and order. I want to be able to point to something to go, yeah, you know, my program has the highest GPA rate and the highest, you know, university graduation rate, whatever you're using. We have, you know, the highest number of rare art pieces. I don't know, whatever it is, right? Just be able to demonstrate that easily. And then I think people too get bogged down in the how to report that out. And I would take a page from our meme-filled culture and go with, you know, easy infographics, things that people can take in very easily. We know people very rarely read every single word and every single line, even the best of us. And so communicating these things, your identity and your impact in as few words as possible is a real strength to be able to be brief but impactful. So I see a lot of grant applications and things that are actually way too wordy.
Amen.
So, yeah. Okay.
2 pages max.
I know.
Yeah.
Just because
You
there's
need more than a 2-pager.
30,000 characters, you don't need 30,000 characters.
Yeah. So going back to the, okay, we're a skin cancer organization and COVID, you know, for obvious reasons, the fallout from that is much more critical on the face of it than, say, skin cancer, sun safety prevention, or, you know, name any other cause right now that's not about either basic needs or healthcare, you know, housing, all those basic needs. But really, you want to, this goes back to this taking stock, right? Instead of going, oh, we need to go look for new grants, look at who already loves you and or at least knows about you, okay? So I would look kind of, again, this is still kind of part of taking stock, but obviously who are your, you know, current funders, maybe your most immediate past funders. I know a lot of times foundations will love you, but you know, you can only apply and get funding for 3 years and then you have to take a pause, or who knows what rules they have in place. But I would just have your short list of who's funded you, who you maybe are already having some conversations with. Maybe they're in your pipeline to apply for later, or you've had some kind of conversation, and go to those folks first, but not without having done those first 3 things that I told you about, because we're really working on these relationships you already have, not a transactional help me, I need money, even though that's maybe what's in the back of your head. The whole being honest and transparent about what you need at this time is going to be important. So you need to do your homework. You know, what are you really trying to accomplish? I have a friend who is with an organization and their executive director has decided they're not losing anybody. They're not cutting anything. And it's like, really? I mean, there's are you going to go down with the ship because you're unwilling to flex at all? So have all these conversations, be sure you feel good about the money, and then before you reach out to some of these folks. Even ones that aren't traditional foundations or granting organizations, okay? Maybe you have, I mean, Giving Circles would be in there, but like maybe you have a hardcore volunteer group who, and there's either a corporate giving or they do matching or who knows. I would reach out to anybody you consider a fan supporter where you have an in. I would also reach out to the other nonprofits that you work with. So the Diaper Bank being a highly collaborative organization, if I were leading the Diaper Bank now, what I would be doing is talking to all my distributing partners that I work with and seeing, are there any potential collaborations to go in together? A lot of grantors want to see this collaboration anyway, and it may just make more sense to have a joint force instead of you just coming, especially depending on what your cause is, right? Diaper banks, even though they're basic needs, they often don't fall in hunger or housing or something like that. So sometimes we have to glom on to say aging in place, right? To work with seniors or early childhood development. So think about those you either work with actively or even if you've just done one-off programs, there may be a way there to look at opportunities that you maybe wouldn't apply for just on your own. If you have government folks or sort of, other VIPs who might be able to connect you in a way that is just not out there to find, I would look and have those conversations as well. Again, about the relationships, hopefully that you've already been stewarding. Though if you haven't been doing this, you'll feel this acutely, and it'll feel more transactional. So yeah, your fan base, people who love you, volunteers. I mean, put out I would be making phone calls. This is a time to be sort of vulnerable, but not, oh God, overly dramatic, right? Like what do you need? And so if you can go in calm, cool with the, in order to, achieve our mission and continue the great work XYZ in this area, we're really going to need to raise $50,000 by July. I don't know, whatever. That's going to be much more effective than Hair on Fire that I've heard from some other friends in different organizations. Remember your staff, if you're an executive or director of development, heck, even if you're a staff of one, if you can kind of communicate that competency of navigating this with an organized grace, if you're able to, that's going to do wonders. Because I've been seeing some trickle down effect of staff just not being on board or being put off by executive not incompetence, but not handling these things well. Anyway, I could go on and on. In terms of stewarding and cultivating, okay, so you can still, I've had some professional debate about this where, I can't be cultivating grants right now. This is too crazy, and it's like, well, it depends, right? Sorry if you hear a power washer in the background. There's some work going on in my condo all of a sudden. But for my organization, we're entrepreneurship education, not a COVID related impacted organization to the extent that it rises to the occasion for these funds, right? But we're going to be doing a entrepreneur education innovation sprint around COVID solutions that could help our local community. Okay. So yeah, I'm reaching out to people about that. But it's in that very specific vein that I've already kind of gone through thinking about who would be interested and why. And also kind of leading with the hope you're well. You may have a lot on your plate right now. This may not even be anything your organization wants to think about right now. But so it just shows that I'm thinking about what they're going through and leading with empathy. Let's see. So in terms of, I'm going to go through stewarding first, because hopefully we would have already had some of these relationships going. And I talked about this a little bit, but maybe you need to segment who you're asking for what. I think a lot of times people just lead with, we're such a great organization and this is what we do. Well, they may not care about everything you do. Maybe they only care about, I find this in a lot, like if you're talking to a bank, they want to do their financial literacy thing because that's in their mission. The fact that it's for, say, Latina education or, people of color, great. But they need to be sure they're tying their corporate development dollars to what is related to their banks. That's financial literacy. So maybe they don't want to fund your whole program. They just want to fund this little thing. We'll let them. That's fine. But know your segment, know who you're talking to. So yeah, just knowing what you know about them, and cultivating right now, like we talked about, it needs to be in light of COVID, what we're going through. This isn't a money grab, and you shouldn't have to do a lot of mental gymnastics when you're looking at these grants to know if you apply or not. And I feel like when I've done searches or looked at the offerings for the COVID specific grants, they're laying it out pretty specifically. So it goes back to sort of those honest conversations, making sure you're aligned with your mission. If you're creating too many new things to try to get a little bit of money, it just might not be worth your time. So that's why going back to your core can be so important. But if you can pivot reasonably, then that can be something to consider. Hopefully of these grantors who is looking maybe more long-term. Maybe you're not thinking about the end of this year. Maybe you're just able to look to next year. And then that way you're less thinking about COVID specific. You can focus more on what you do or long-term. So think about that. And it may just be a quick conversation or email to go, look, I know things are crazy. In the interest of keeping the organization, financially sustainable and looking out in 2021, what do you think about XYZ? So I think you can do that in a way that is empathetic and professional without it being whiny or kind of grabby. But again, you'll know hopefully who you can ask those things to and what. I think it's a great time to improve your grants process. I know we often don't have time, right? We're always just apply. Oh, I just found this, and you feel like you're in the hamster wheel. But there's different things you can do right now if you're sort of taking at least a little bit of an operational pause to look at grants. I think development and grant writing a lot of times is an isolated activity. And I really love working with organizations or being able to pull those in and to really try to create a culture of philanthropy. When you have that light bulb moment go off with a program officer that's never written grants, doesn't have any experience, when they kind of understand a little better, what development does, and they can work a lot better together. It can help your evaluation right? So if you have a program officer or somebody who's more boots on the ground that understands, this is why we're taking data or getting testimonials or any of those things that you're going to use in your grants and other development work, that's really important. So creating a culture of philanthropy. It's important for people to know why, how to include your supporters, whether that be a foundation or a corporate foundation or anybody who funds you, how you can include them in the work that you do. Sometimes it doesn't really lend itself, but this is what you can build in to make yourself look even more thoughtful and transparent, is when you can build some of these stewarding opportunities into your process. So you could be part of what, even if they don't ask you, right? You can say, every year we would love for XYZ Foundation to come do a tour.
Mm-hmm.
So then it can serve as evaluation and they can get eyes on there, but you're stewarding them, you're setting them up for the next grant that's bigger. And so things like that you can put into your process. I would look at all that boilerplate template. Once you write one grant, then you have the basis for your next grant. Now's the time to sort of review and jazz up, either in light of COVID or just it's 2020, to get some fresh copy, as it were. Let's see. Oh, another thing about getting more folks involved in the grants process, I'm not saying necessarily the writing of it, but more in the generation and evaluation and bigger picture thing. But it is nice to have more than one set of eyes on your grants.
Mm-hmm.
I sometimes have to be the only person to write a grant, but man, it helps a lot to just have someone go, it's actually, I don't understand that, or just to find typos. It says, while we love our technology, they don't catch them all. But it can be nice to have people in different parts of your organization or a volunteer even read your grants so that they can both catch typos, they can check your understandability, right? You would hope that anyone that reads from outside of your organization should understand it. And sometimes you are too close inside your organization to really get a good feel for what you're actually saying. So more eyes, I think, is a good thing. So at least right now, these are the things that I think about. A lot of it is sort of taking a self-assessment, taking stock, looking at who your funders already are, what your pipeline looks like. The other thing I would say before turning it over to you guys is either get help with or learn how to become a really great Google searcher and know how to use your foundation grant library. If you don't have those two things in your toolbox skill set, you wanna work on that. I see so many people spend hours and hours looking for grants and go, yeah, I didn't really find much. And it's like in like a 5 minute, Google search, I'm like, well, I found some. And maybe this is just learning about yourself or how Google does searches, or knowing how foundations and grantors think, so then you know what keywords to search for. But yeah, those are two big things to have in your toolkit.
Skill set. So Beverly, and we have a few questions that came in to me that I'm excited to share, but one thing I did not hear from you that I think, we're all kind of hoping for is just submit a bunch of grants and they're all going to come in because it's a numbers game.
Oh, no. I love writing a grant that you are not aligned for or don't have a strong case for is like the hardest thing, right? You
Waste
want
of
to
time.
really
You're not going to get funded.
yeah, you want to feel really good. So vetting and getting, that's why the whole getting down to who you really are in that core is so important. Like I said, if you're con mi madre and you're looking for Latina education grants, you know, I'm looking for in Texas, Latina education, middle school, high school, pipeline to college, blah, 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 blah. You know, you name all those things. And so the closer I can find tailored to that, all the better. Yeah, so vetting is key. And maybe that's a part what I was sort of saying about the research. Think about, you really have to think about how much time each grant potentially is going to take you. And then look at all the other things we have to do. So it can be hard. A lot of times I have like a little grief. I'm like, oh, I can't apply for that. It's just doesn't make sense. And a lot of that is also what the reporting or other requirements are, because it's very rarely just a check. I have gotten just a check in the mail. It's just the best. But it's few and far between. Yeah.
Well, so there's a few questions here I'm going to go through. So Gianna, I'm going to come back to your board questions. I think it's more individual, but I love it. So do you have any guidance as to how much annual funding should come from grants? What % of the budget? And, you know, I'd love to hear from everyone. I really think it should be really diverse. In a perfect world, it would be about a third, right? A third individual, third
probably,
third foundation. If you're just starting out, it's going to be realistically what you can get, right? And if you're trying to put together a budget for 2021 and trying to put some grant expectations in there, I'd start pretty low. It takes, I don't know,
yeah. I mean, I found with the diaper bank, you know, it was really hard inside of a year to apply for anything. I did actually get a grant 9 months. But there was a local family foundation that didn't have any, you know, but I also found a lot of grants that I just put on a parking lot list that you had to be at least 3 years old, because they want to see that stability
Right.
before they're
security.
Yeah.
And I saw a recent statistic that I have found really helpful, although it is humbling, is that for first-time cold grantors, the success rate is about 17%. So we're talking less than 1 in 5 cold first-time grants will be funded. So if you're submitting 5 grants, you might get 1. And so as you're putting together a 2021 budget, I think that's a really realistic, although a little bit of a hard pill to swallow.
Yeah.
You know, if you're going to have an 80% success rate and you're just building this program, you're not going to get there, and then you're going to just put yourself in a sticky situation.
Yeah, I would say, and humble brag or not, my percentage has always been higher, but that's because I don't let myself apply for things that I don't feel pretty good about, no matter
that
what.
That kind of leads me to Janice's question. She said, is it important to know a person at the org for which you're writing a grant? Is that part of the stewarding process? And I think this is something we can all chime in on. It's great if you know them, but I think, Beverly, one thing you were saying a lot that I want to call out is you don't have to know them. You can still pick up the phone. And the #1 way to get that percentage up from 17% to much higher is just calling and having a short conversation. And I just want to share a short story that I had yesterday, a conversation I had yesterday, and then we can chat, is actually with Sharon Guest, who's on the phone, the organization she works for. We had submitted a proposal. I have the privilege of working with them. We were invited to submit, you know, we did an LOI and everything. We submitted a great proposal, and they called and said, hey, things are changing right now. Let's hop on the phone, and ultimately said, reapply in a month. We want to fund you, but things are up in the air, and we're funding really direct need, food banks and all of that sort of thing, but apply in a month. And the only way we would have known that and not had this flat out rejection is by picking up the phone the first time. And similarly, there was a some COVID emergency funding that on paper we looked sort of aligned with. And the executive director just picked up the phone and said, hey, here's what we're doing. Should we apply? And the grants officer said, not yet.
Yeah.
Wait until the next funding cycle, because they internally had, since they launched the RFP, basically broken their 3 funding cycles into immediate need. Food bank. I was actually on a Zoom call with your executive director yesterday. Their food banks, emergency relief, PPE materials. And then they said in August, the next wave will be the intermediate, broadening it to things like mental health, to things like, school programs. And then as they look towards October, recovery. The only way we would have known that is by picking up the phone, and we saved ourselves so much time. So Janice, going back to your question, it's great. And the more you do this, you get to know funders. I know Jessica on our team, I think was on the call, she might be on mute, remembers everyone in Chicago she's ever worked with. So she can call someone and say, hey, we were at so-and-so and we did that grant application. So you sort of do build your network of funders, and who you can pick up the phone and who's going to take your call, and who's a little prickly and you're just going to shoot them an email. But I think when you apply for any grant, it is worth outreach to the program officer. That's what they're there for.
Yeah, at a minimum, the question was, sort of if they have unsolicited, grants. They can't know to invite you unless they know who you are. So I always do the tack I take depends on the organization. With the diaper bank, I got to be like, we're new,
Right. Great excuse.
I got to lead with that, but I always would, I had a nice email that I would cut and paste, truth be told, and tweak it a little depending on who I was talking to. Attach my 1-pager, right? That was very clear, brief but impactful about, mission, goals, impact, and a little bit about how their investment could help, right? They want to know what their part is, not just what you do. So I did that to a bunch of people. And then depending on whatever organization with now, I'll take a different tack. With this, it may be you have a new program, or I often get to do it because I'm the new whomever, interim ED or interim CEO or whatever. So I would use any little piece of news, any launch, anything to be like, you maybe didn't know that this is what we're doing, or use your annual report. I don't know, any little bit that you have to sort of communicate, do that, and use those little bits over the course of the year. Do a little, I have to do a reminder, or I look and I'm like, oh my gosh, it's been too long. But I just, either at the beginning of the month or mid-month, whatever, I have a little calendar thing that dings me. And then, hold on, baby, my 8-year-old at the door, to just say, it says steward. And I go back and I look at my list at who am I working with at the time to see, well, when did I last ping them? Oh my gosh, it's been 6 months, that's too long. And I go back and look and then see what I talked to them about and then try to update them, right? So you don't have to be badgering folks. That is not a good look. But at the same time, you can inform and educate in a genuine, openness to work. Because I think too, a lot of nonprofits feel like, oh, it's a funder. Oh, it's like, no, we're doing the important work. We are allowing them to do their work through us. And I think that that's an important distinction, that it is a partnership. It's not just, oh, well, they give us money.
Right.
Yeah.
I'd love to hear what other folks do to reach out, or if you have more questions about that, because I think that's really critical as you're building a grants program, to cultivate funders with whom you don't have a relationship, or as Steph asked in the chat box, to get on the radar of funders who don't accept unsolicited applications. So I think Beverly has some really great examples. Share your annual report, share updates on what you're doing. What have other folks done, or other tips that you might have? I know, Sharon, you are great at getting meetings with people. What do you do? And I know that's more on the individual side and putting her on the spot. She's just...
Let me unmute. Yeah, mine is more individuals, but it's always around the relationship as opposed to transactional, which I think is what I heard Beverly talking about, just informing a very casual kind of meeting with them. It may not, I don't go in all the time, the first time for an ask. It's just mostly a thank you, what are you doing, getting to know them. And they'll be more inclined to meet with me later. So I'm just echoing a lot of what Beverly was talking about and trying to get those, what you do.
I think a line I use a lot is to see if we can work together for some kind of mutual benefit.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Right? Mutual benefit. And I find that that works. And, I think you have to be cool with the people are like, that's not my bag. And you go, great. Bless and release, as they say. Not everyone is going to want to fund you, and you can't make that personal. A lot of people get their feelings hurt if foundation is like, well, that's not really what we do, or that's not in the budget this year or whatever. It's like, that's great. Use it as either a future opportunity or cross it off. There's so many other places.
All the time. Yeah. So I think there's an opportunity right now as well, because hopefully, and I think everyone really did chime in, and there's a few of you who have joined since we started, so feel free, please, to introduce yourselves and chime in. You're all doing great things. Gianna and Robert, you talked about getting a lot of this programming online, and that's an opportunity to reach out to funders, like Beverly said, even if they're really focused on immediate need right now, to say, hey, we're looking at our 2021 budget. We wanted to share this super awesome update, and we look forward to updating you. I'll call you in 6 months, right? That's an example of stewardship as well.
Well, it's interesting. We've been able to raise funds to create our bronze medallion plaques. We've been able to put the QR codes on it. We've been able to make a WordPress website. We've gone to people. We've done lectures. The one thing that always bothers me with raising the grants, the people who want to give you money, they want to give you money for the project, but they don't want to pay you anything. I mean, I've been working at this for 4 years, and I haven't received a dime yet as a chairman, or been able to step down to be executive director just to get paid. And be honest with you, especially now, it's wearing thin as far as my time and energy goes. As nothing like a small amount of money to give you more incentive, so you feel like you're somebody that's evaluating you by paying you or wanting to see you get paid. And I found that to be a problem.
Beverly, I'd love to hear what you have to say, because I actually got this exact email from one of my coaching clients, and Gianna, you just shared that with me as well. How do you pay your staff with grant funding?
Sure. So some of it is knowing some of the tricks, right? So, a lot of these foundations don't want to pay overhead.
Right.
But you, especially if you're a one-person show, or if you're an executive who's actually doing the program, then you're doing program, and your time is doing the program.
Right.
So don't discount your time, even if you're the executive, as being overhead in that sense. There's a distinction there
About
that I think a lot of people forget. So this goes back to the diversification, right? Yeah, if you have grant funders who are only these foundations that only want to pay program, to the extent that you can, I try to educate up. I know I have the kind of snooty ability to do so. Not everyone does, and I don't necessarily have that conversation with everyone, but just that point of, if I'm not doing it, then who's doing it? So there's some of that, and I know it's kind of a fraught conversation, but I would say try to see where you're restricted versus, unrestricted is coming from. If you have to, I would also educate your constituents, right? So when I was at the diaper bank, it was like, we are a really lean model, but, you know, paying for a warehouse, paying for someone to manage it all is what has to happen, right? And I think people were more than happy to, you know, even say, this is for your time, you know, after getting some education. So educating funders, educating your folks. Hopefully you can get in some of those unrestricted, just pure gifts like, oh yes, but I think it's a change of mindset for, you know, maybe you, but then everybody to go, look, if I'm giving you $50, it's not just $50 for a medallion. You have to figure out the cost of that is actually your time, and you
Right.
are running you're running the program, and that is a program cost.
That's a program, and it should be in your program budget. And, you know, hopefully through that diversification of a varied, you know, amount of grants from either Gen Ops funders or from programmatic funders, that will eventually equal a significant percentage of your budget. But I can't remember. I think every single grant budget I've submitted in the last ever has had some salary, overhead, and fringe benefits as part of that program budget. Because to Beverly's point, otherwise you have no program. You just have a great idea. You know, you have a diaper, you have a warehouse full of diapers. You don't even have a warehouse and no one to do the work. So it
You can't
is.
put the diapers anywhere to do the program if we don't
You
have
get the diapers. You just
I'm gonna call that overhead, but that's essentially our, you know, outside of staff, that's our biggest program cost, is a place to put these diapers. And so I think it's also, like I said, it's part of that education, and not just taking no for an answer, or, you know, the black and white, right? Everybody, it's hard to write an application that's going to effectively capture every nonprofit mission effectively. So, and feel free to ask and pick up the phone. I mean, a lot of times rent is just automatically in a different part of, you know, it's just automatically considered overhead. And I had to go to funders and go, that's not really how it works for us. And this is why, you know, so it's like, you know, more about your cause than they do. And if they want to hold fast to whatever arbitrary rule, then you don't probably want them as a funder.
Right. Well, y'all, we're at 12:03 and I want to be very cognizant of everyone's busy schedule. So do we have one or two last questions before we all go about our busy days? No, great. Well, thank you all. This was just wonderful. It's always really restorative and exciting to be on the phone with people I don't know. It's fantastic to have some new faces and voices on the call and remember that we're all in this together. And, you know, I am just perpetually inspired by the creativity and the commitment of our nonprofits doing all this great work. So Beverly, thank you for sharing your expertise and wisdom.
I'm so happy to be here.
Thank you all. I'll be sending a short email out. I'll include Beverly's email if that's okay, Bev, with you. And feel free to schedule a call with either one of us. We'd love to continue the conversation. And I hope to, next one is scheduled for May 8th. So I'm certainly hoping to see you all there. But feel free to shoot me any specific questions you might have if you want to include them. Have a great time.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.